tuned our subspace channel to Star Trek's finest opinions and verifiable volumes of episodes to review. This is a Captain's Log streaming at warp speed. I'm Bryan Kreutz, host of the television talk show A Captain's Log. With me is our consulting producer, Chip Selstad, who's kind enough to join us during this TV off-season for our streaming show.
Why, thank you, Brian. This week we continue with our season 1 of Star Trek, The Next Generation home video review, HVR that is, on DVD. This week we are on Disc 3. The episodes we will be reviewing are The Battle, Hide and Q, Haven, and The Big Goodbye.
It's going to be fun. I like these episodes. The first season of Star Trek The Next Generation is a beauty of a season in its own right. Now, character developments are crucial to the success and returning viewership new television series, not just Star Trek. However, we're talking about Star Trek The Next Generation, and it had a very well-meshed chemistry of actors who played an ensemble of spacefaring characters. For the next few minutes before we get into reviewing the Disc 3 DVD HVR, as Chip just alluded to, of Star Trek The Next Generation, Chip and I are going to describe the character growth moments of the main Next Generation cast in Season 1 to this point. But first, let's send it over to my co-host, Lili Doubtable Lili Fox-Lim, for some Klingon knees, if you please.
Hi, I'm Mark Okrand, and you're learning Klingon from Lili Fox-Lim. Compared
to English, Klingon sentences go backwards. For instance, in English, we would say, the dog sniffs you. So, the dog sniffs you. But in Klingon, the sentences go like this. They have switched subjects and objects. So if we were going to say the same sentence, it would be you, the object, sniffs, the verb, the dog. But it doesn't mean that you're sniffing the dog now. It's the same. The dog sniffs you. This also means that we have to be very patient because the subject comes at the end of the sentence. So you're saying Klingons attack, you don't know who's attacking Klingons until the very end of the sentence, and then they're like, Romulans, and you're like, ah! Oh.
Thank you, Lili. It's always great to learn a little bit more Klingon these days. But now let's talk about the Star Trek The Next Generation characters, Brian. I am going to start with our stalwart captain, Jean-Luc Picard. To me, Picard doesn't really have that much of a drastic change or evolution in his character other than the story of the Stargazer in the episode The Battle. So Picard knows a little better how to work with his crew. He's the overarching leader who proves time and again, even with facial expressions, that he is a true explorer. On the philosophical and leadership side, Picard had given us several speeches that would have an enemy or a culture listen very closely to his words of advice, like in episodes Encounter at Farpoint and Justice. It's not vital, I believe, that we have full character development at this point early in Season 1. He's a sportsman, and he's seen fencing as a hobby late in Season 1, but Patrick Stewart is as high quality a caliber actor Star Trek could ever hope to get atop the cast of characters playing the Jean-Luc Picard.
Yes, indeed. He's the subject of everything good that you choose to call him. Tasha Yar, played by Denise Crosby, her short backstory comes in bits and pieces throughout Season 1 of Star Trek The Next Generation. Escaping a failed Federation Earth colony, joining Starfleet, recovering from childhood trauma, as shown briefly in her memory of holding her cat while trying to escape a rape gang on planet Turkana 4 in the episode Where No One Has Gone Before. Unfortunately, Tasha Yar's character, by Armus, a pure being of evil late in Season 1, as we will review that episode a little bit later here on a Captain's Log streaming at warp speed. The episode title was Skin of Evil. Now soon on this show, Tasha Yar finds herself, she could have produced, now if her character, here's what I want to say, if her character continued on past Skin of Evil, to me, it could have produced strong plot lines that explored how the Utopia Trek was meant to embody the security chief that was never really fully up, and how the audience worked towards for themselves, like Star Trek does, it is an example for humans time and again. There's a clarity and a good friendship between Yar and Data, and also Yar and Worf in season 1. Tasha feeling very strongly, yelling about her traumatic life in an outburst to cue an encounter at Farpoint really does set up an important reality.
It does indeed. Now we're moving on to Riker and Troi. Established as being in a relation pilot, the two broke up because their careers had separated them down different paths. Now later they served together, and they served for 7 years. They don't either try to make it fully work or even fully move on to somebody else. Now, in regards to Troi in The Last Outpost, it's established that she cannot read the Ferengi mentally, but later she can read the Ferengi in the episode The Best. We're going to be reviewing it later today. Now, moving on with her relationship with Riker, the two do backtrack a lot in their relationship in the episode Haven. She's the last of the 3 women on the cast to survive at the end of season 1, as the character of Beverly Crusher moves off to become the head of Starfleet Medical, and then Yar, as you know, gets killed on an away mission by Armus in Skin of Evil. Troi really has to get out seat on the bridge more. She starts doing this on Beverly Crusher and Worf in Lonely Among Us.
Yeah, now Worf perhaps had the most noticeable ongoing character development. After Tasha Yar dies, Worf becomes the chief of security in season number 1. His discommodation and redemption, the death of his paramour, and introduction of his son, and his exploration of his culture and beliefs were all threads developed over multiple episodes. For most of Star Trek The Next Generation 1, though, Worf had all supporting even the con or ops bridge stations, or even standing in the background and dropping quippy one-liners. Worf's position on the Enterprise D was originally not defined. Now, due to his Klingon strength, though, Worf often he was kind of used as a character tool to show how powerful a potential enemy was, is how I feel the writing went. If they could take out Worf, then who could stand against the rest of the crew of D? Now, going just season number 1, it would have been difficult to predict how far Worf would come to a fully fleshed out character. It really wasn't until Tasha Yar was killed off in Skin of Evil that you alluded to earlier that Worf began to develop and grow as a true character of Next Generation.
Yeah, he developed it maybe a little bit before that. We knew already at this point that Tasha was going to be leaving the show. So I do believe the writers were giving Worf a little extra lines to be just before they killed off the character of Yar. Now, character development with Wesley Crusher is an interesting, as he is growing as a teen. He starts off as this little pipsqueak of a character kid who wants to see the bridge, too frightened to leave his mother's shadow in that turbo lift and actually step onto the bridge. He moves into an acting ensign role where no one has gone before, where he was pretty much the hero of that series, very integral in returning that ship back to its main area. The wearing of an official 3 colors uniform, he takes the navigation position in a relief role on the bridge throughout the first season. His relationship with his mom is strong, and while she does ensure that he is not pushed too hard, he does a lot of schoolwork and projects and sits at the actual engineering stations on the bridge engineering at the advice of the Traveler, who identified him as a prodigy equal to Einstein and Mozart. However, Wesley clearly misses making it into the Academy, coming in 2nd place at the Starfleet exam testing in the episode Coming of Age.
I do remember that. We're going to get to that episode here shortly in a couple weeks on the Captain's Log, streaming at warp speed. Now let's get to the character Geordi LaForge. And Geordi LaForge, the chief engineer at the season 2, interestingly absent for character progression within season 1, which is what we're talking about here.
Yeah.
There's no mention or character development of Geordi LaForge working in engineering, or really even making any type of exit from his con position on the bridge, to work in engineering or train in engineering.
Little undefined, as we are right now.
Absolutely. Other than there's one instance like episode, but we've already watched it. LaForge and Riker go down to a seemingly empty engineering in one episode during season 1. Now, Geordi was a human Starfleet officer who was originally a lieutenant junior grade while serving as the helmsman of the Enterprise D. His upbeat, happy personality is contagious. He's born blind, and he uses his visor to see things that the rest of the crew cannot see. There's really isn't a lot of character development early on in season 1 for LaForge, except his wish to be for a bit through Q. I guess I should say Riker acting as Q in the episode Hiding Q. Now, later in season 1, Geordi's character development picks up in the episode Heart of Glory that we were just talking about in pre-production that we will review also here with you in a couple weeks on a Captain's Log streaming at warp speed. Now, LaForge uses a visual acuity transmitter. This little visor extra piece on the left-hand side allows the visual input to be transmitted to a display unit, such as the main viewer on the Enterprise D. However, the mission was not very stable, not long, and only had a range of a few kilometers if you're measuring like a Canadian or someone from Europe. Now, also later in season 1, Geordi's first test of being a starship commander is shown in the episode The Arsenal of Freedom, where he proved that he had the ability to successfully lead a skeleton crew to victory.
And he did a very good job at that. Now, moving on to Data. He's being played by a very high quality actor in Brent. And as a star of the show is season 1, Data goes from babbling too much, just giving you so much excessive information that we really do not need and is not relevant. He was prevalent in doing that in season 1.
Stop babbling, Mr. Data.
Yes, stop babbling. we really are getting to see a lot of development with Data within one here. He grows to be one of my favorite characters.
Absolutely. What's not to like?
Yes. So he does not, he's spewing out all that excessive information, but we do see this big evolution with Data as a character. Aside from his endeavors to become more human in the scenes from Encounter at Farpoint, his holodeck scene with Riker in the forest, the genesis of his character in the Data lore, Spiner was being played the second role of lore, showing and proving to the production staff that he can pull off this second role masterfully, and it was very enjoyable.
It was.
Starting to realize he needs to learn how to edit himself and refrain from saying so much of that babbling we were just talking to. It was curbed early on in episode Angel 1 of season 1. Data was counting down the minutes and seconds later around the planet, and Riker cuts him off because he's getting annoyed with just this precision that Data is known for. And Data eventually finishes that line by whispering it under his breath the exact seconds. Data has been regarded as secondhand property by Riker.
That's right.
In the episode The Battle, the Ferengi are all poking and prodding around him. Oh, I sure like to purchase this thing. No, you wouldn't like second-hand, and you wouldn't want him. Data does pick up on this second-handed joke, not too quickly, but a little bit. But it was a way to dissuade the Ferengi from their interest in him.
I love that scene. I'm glad you brought that up. Let's get to William T. Riker, the first officer of the Enterprise D Galaxy-class ship. And Riker hasn't grown his famous beard yet in Encounter at Farpoint, and at times established in the very first season. Riker's very straightforward from the beginning, with allowing Picard away teams on the USS Hood with his previous captain. He's very adamant, making sure he's keeping him safe, Picard safe at all times, by keeping him in the captain's chair and Riker doing the away team leading. Now, Riker had the reputation of also being a ladies' man, although we've established he's had a long-running romantic relationship with Deanna Troi. He's now just close friends with her professionally on the Enterprise D. Now, Riker was smooth, charismatic, fiery, and loved by many, including us. In this and Angel, we see this pretty early on with other women and Commander Riker. Now, Riker's character growth as a leader to the point where he's also been offered the captaincy of the USS Drake, as we will get to reviewing that episode soon here in the first season episode. The Arsenal of Freedom is that particular episode that we'll review here on a Captain's Log streaming at warp speed. As we will review in one of today's episodes, though, Hiding Q is the title. Riker is endowed with powers from the Q continuum and used his newfound power to save the crew, hostile aliens, like Q does with the snap of his finger, inhabiting the Fantasy. There we go. Bringing Lieutenant Worf and Wesley Crusher back to life in the same process.
Now, it would have been nice if we could have just brought Worf back. Wesley?
Oh, no!
No!
I love Wesley.
Okay, we could bring him back. We need plot points with him. Without Wesley, there would be no mother of Wesley. And we're going to move along to Crusher, Chief Medical Officer, the mother of Wesley, and the widow of Captain Jean-Luc Picard's close friend, Jack Crusher. Yes, Crusher was appointed Chief Medical Officer at her own request, really, of the Enterprise, and in 2364 joined the crew at the Farpoint Station with her son. An energy-based life form from the Beta Renair cloud was accidentally trapped aboard the Enterprise. Initially, Worf's body moved into Crusher. It controlled her for a brief period of time, attempting to learn how to use the Enterprise navigational systems in order to return home. Then it took control of Captain Picard in Lonely Among Us. Captain Picard invited Crusher on a holodeck adventure set in the fictional world of Dixon Hill in the episode titled The Big Goodbye.
That's right.
We will get to that review here in a few moments. Dr. Crusher is a character in one, being very much a medical leader and a mother. In the episode titled Symbiosis, and a review of that episode here later on a Captain's Log streaming at warp speed, shows Beverly at her best. Now, despite Next Generation's notorious rule that the lead characters could never have interpersonal conflict, that was a preset set by Gene Roddenberry in his utopian future. The story here finds very good reason for Crusher and Picard to verbally duke it out, both having high moral standards that compel them to take action, or in Picard's case, take no action whatsoever. Beverly sees a drug addiction to narcotics for society and strongly believes Picard and her should intervene. She does get to speak her mind to a few these aliens fight being prevented, stopping the Onarans' drug problem by the good old Prime Directive.
I love how you tease that episode Symbiosis. You know, you even wrote in one of your very first episodes on television about Symbiosis being one of the top episodes that defines what Star Trek truly is all about.
Yes, that was our episode, the 10 best shows that exemplified the ideals of Star Trek.
That's right. Check it out if you haven't already on Roku, and you can also check it out on YouTube. But we are talking about Star The Next Generation Season 1 on DVD, originally released in, I believe it was 2002. There's 26 episodes on here. We have to bring this up every week because they're only producing 10 episodes every season now on current Star Trek, which we love current Star Trek. But this is what Paramount should look at again. 26 episodes in one season.
7 discs. This is an amazing series. Just every time we show it, it just amazes me just how great it is. Now, this week, this is where we are, Disc 3, where we are going to be reviewing all 4 of these episodes.
Looking forward to it. I really enjoy doing this, and I really appreciate you stepping in front of the camera as one of our producers to help us guide us through Season 1 of Next Generation.
Yeah, it's definitely a joy of mine. I mean, both you and I have such a passion for not just Nick, but Star Trek entirety.
For sure. Original, Deep Space Nine, Voyager, Enterprise, Picard,
even
Discovery,
all the new Trek, the movies as well too.
Yes.
I mean, there's a lot of pushback with those new movies, the JJ verse as they're called. But if it's Star Trek, we love it. Again, I've said it before. I said it last week that, you know, even if it's not that great of an episode, and I think we might have one. That's not what we're going to be reviewing today. We'd rather watch the worst episode of Star Trek than the best episode of something else.
That's right, absolutely. And what other series or franchise on the entire planet Earth in the 21st century right now has 13 feature films that have been released in the theaters?
13.
None, only Star Trek. Star Trek holds the record, folks. Any franchise, you can take any franchise. Star Trek holds the record for most theatrical films released in a movie theater. 13.
13.
It's been a while since we've had
Absolutely.
another one.
Yeah, I mean, we don't even want to get started talking about that other franchise, but you know the difference between the fans of that other franchise and the fans of Star Trek?
You mean the Wars of Stars?
Yeah, the Wars Among the Stars that took place way, like so many years ago.
Yes, in a galaxy far, far away.
Yeah, most of our fans don't hate 6 of the 9 movies that were made.
But in that franchise, perhaps they do. So fans, that's why we're trying to get you Star Trek. And what better way to do it? Generation, the very first spinoff. Now, last week on A Captain's Log streaming at warp speed, we reviewed 4 episodes on DVD disc number 2 of season 1 Star Trek: The Next Generation. Again, we're going to move to DVD disc number 3. Chip, let's have you start with your review of the Ferengi and Picard-centric episode, The Battle. But first, check out the trailer.
Next time on Star Trek: The Next Generation.
So what's the cause of my headache?
I haven't the slightest idea.
An old enemy trick Captain's mind. In a deadly game of revenge.
You murdered my only son.
Now he's forced to relive a terrifying battle.
Look for a silver sphere. Destroy it!
On Star Trek: The Next Generation.
All right, so very early on in this episode, The Battle, Picard is suffering from the severe, it's a headache, a debilitating migraine. Now this is significant as we learn that headaches are uncommon here in this point of the 24th century. Dr. Crusher indicates this, that the brain we have now mapped pretty good, so we shouldn't be having headaches. So it's very infrequent that she actually comes across them. This is kind of weird because as we progress through this show and even into the other series do become more frequent, as if the writer forgot that we established this here.
Yeah, that's too bad because, to your point, if they've mapped out most of the human brain, you would think they would find, where the problems are stemming from, whether it be the spinal cord or cranium, any other part of the brain.
I can't wait till that medical, breakthrough that we have nowadays, because I get migraines. I know what Picard is feeling like in this episode.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. But if you really think about it, Star Trek is a first for so many different
absolutely.
So why not be the first?
Trek is an innovative of tech. Yes.
Stop the headaches, please. For 3 days, there have been no messages from the Ferengi except for stand by, Enterprise, in this episode.
Stand by for what?
What are we waiting for? Yeah, I mean, we've only met the Ferengi once, but finally, wearing dyed, off-colored animal skins and lightly colored boots, a trio of Ferengi beam on board the Enterprise D bridge. Captain Picard is presented with the derelict remains of his starship, the Stargazer.
It is second look at the Ferengi. This time they've actually established a rank with Damon as their leader.
Oh, that's right.
The Ferengi leader, Bach, then 2 of his officers, Kazago and Rata, are puzzled and almost in shock when Bach tells Picard that the starship that is under his control is a gift to honor the hero of Mexia.
What? Are you kidding me?
It's a gift. It is free of charge. Now,
That's
do you know this? Ferengi to give away.
Ferengi never give things away. They're all about capitalism and profit,
they don't.
right?
Yeah, so naturally, Kazago and Rada are just like, what's going on here?
Now, as a defender of Deanna Troi myself, even though it may have been a glaring writing mistake, she can now sense emotions from the Ferengi, whereas Troi couldn't in the first encounter episode with the Ferengi, and that was titled The Last Outpost.
Yeah,
right?
we just watched that last week.
Yes.
So a little bit of backtrack again on continuity is confusing.
And now, perhaps, this is my theory, it's because they are at a close proximity on the bridge with the Ferengi, so maybe she can read their mind at that point, or because maybe the mind control device.
There you go.
Right?
That's a very good thought. I never really took that into consideration.
Maybe, maybe that's what it is. A little headcanon, one of the phrases that you coined.
Yeah.
Either way, it's a valuable ability that Deanna Troi possesses. Counselor Troi states that she felt something too, and describes it more as a thought, but more in nature.
Now, as Picard is describing this thought about the incident on the Stargazer, he begins to experience physical sensations as if he's still there, and he's able to smell the smoke from the fire and feel the heat of the fire on the bridge distinctly from his memories.
Right.
Now, the sense of smell is closely linked with memory, and that's been scientifically proven. So probably more so than any other human sense. But moments later, observation lounge, Picard is telling the crew about his battle in the Maxia Zeta starship system when the Stargazer ship is fired on by an unidentified starship. He says something as if it were actually there, and he was there in the moment right then again.
I do remember that. That was interesting, yeah, how he described it, yeah, absolutely. So, we're looking here at the episode called The Battle from Season 1 Star Trek Generation number 4. Now, Fusion, the Stargazer was again hit. Suddenly, Picard tells his story, as you alluded to, Chip. Picard, out of nowhere, asks the Stargazer's weapons officer, Vigo, who's the only character that's identified, that there's a ship that's attacking. This surprises everyone, including us as viewers in the observation lounge, as Picard's kind of talking out of his head.
We're like, what's going on?
Yeah, what's he talking about? Who's Vigo?
Who's Vigo?
Yeah. But then he says that he's actually this out loud. Reminds Picard where he left off in his story, and he continues with the story saying he ordered a sensor bearing on the enemy vessel as it came around for another pass. He then performed what is now known as the Picard maneuver.
Yeah, the Picard maneuver. Now, it almost seems kind of theoretically impossible to me. I mean, does every ship that jumps into warp speed always leave some sort of like a visual, you know, like a print, like echo behind when it's going? That's I don't quite understand where this Picard maneuver came in, but it's a plot point that they're trying to get to.
Yeah, it's tricky.
So.
Slam on the brakes. Yeah.
But I mean, it was a good effect when you actually really do see it at the end of the episode. But I do love the in-universe continuity for the time frame of the Picard maneuver. Showing Picard on the bridge. Obvious reuse of the bridge sets from Star Trek and the motion picture movies, specifically 2 and 3. You even see that, you actually told me this a little earlier, that it still has that battle scarring from those movies.
All the smoke on the wall still.
Yeah, exactly. Of course, it's illogical that a Federation starship, that it's going to look similar, you know, inside. And what do you think about this? Thoughts on the exterior design of this ship, this Constellation class?
It's kind of like an in-the-middle type segment between Next Generation and original series films. I thought they did a really good job on it. I think it's a solid middle-of-the-era combination of the classic interior bridge and some good design on the exterior, as you indicated. Seems like the same style starship was used later in the USS Hathaway, another Ferengi episode with Armin Shimmerman during Season 2. That's right. It was called Peak Performance. But this Stargazer was the first command for Picard. Lots of memory he's caught up in now. Spock is using this thought maker device in all this confusion.
Yeah, he's definitely just, this is wrecking with his brain, and of course the cause of the headaches that he's having. But let's talk a little bit more about the recreation of the Stargazer as the crew is wearing current Starfleet uniforms. I think there might be a little bit of confusion with time frame and uniform changing, but I always thought that maybe they were using the maroons, those red ones, in the motion pictures during this time.
That's right. Yeah, my favorite uniforms are the film series Monster Maroons, as you referred to. But we were talking about in pre-production, like there was Wesley Crusher, 16 years old. He sees a holographic image of his father in the holodeck when he was a baby. So that's 9 years prior to Season 1, and he was 16 years old. So maybe there's about, what, a 5 or 6 year gap or so between possibly changing from his Crusher in the Monster Maroon, seeing Vigo.
So theoretically possible if they changed those uniforms while they were serving together on the Stargazer as well.
That's what it sounds like.
And of course, remember in that episode that Jack Crusher was wearing, he's got the TNG comm badge, not the one that they actually, the big one, you know, that they're wearing in the movies.
Exactly.
Which wasn't a comm badge at all.
No, it wasn't. It was just like an insignia, a nice big metal insignia pin.
Yeah.
However, there is one time it wasn't the comm badge. Remember on Enterprise and Rachel Garrett?
Yes, she did tap it. Yeah,
but it was the exact same
Yesterday's
design.
Enterprise.
That's right. Great episode.
Can't wait to get to that one.
Yeah, that's Season 3. We might be getting ahead of ourselves because of these Monster Maroons, but Monster Maroons were used by Picard during his Academy days. However, at some point, there has to be the retiring of the Monster Maroons and the introduction of these colorful Next Generation
Yeah, you're
uniforms.
absolutely correct on that.
I mean, they had the piping on the shoulders. There was a little difference, and then they upgraded to like the neck.
The collar.
The collar with
the stiff collar.
Yes, with
those. Those are one of my favorites.
Those are great. Yeah, absolutely. They even introduced them in Deep Space Nine as a little crossover at the beginning too.
Yeah, indeed.
But it's also notable that this was literally the last mission of the Stargazer.
That's right.
So remembering it and only being 9 years prior, they've updated possibly to these same uniforms seen currently, the colorful ones in Next Generation Season 1. By the way, though, in the flashback in Season 5 of Next Generation episode titled Violations, Picard actually has hair. He's younger. And he shows Crusher, who has longer. And he shows Dr. Crusher, unfortunately, her dead husband, Jack Crusher. But Picard is wearing the same Next Generation red piping on the shoulders and this uniform.
Okay.
As this took place also almost around the same time as the Stargazer as well.
All right. Well, that's right. A little bit of continuity. Again, Picard with the hair. That was great. That's the only time that I think that you ever got to see that.
Yes.
That was a. I believe those might have come from dailies when they were asking Luke.
Yeah,
I
have heard that.
G was adamant he did not want a bald captain. Especially an Englishman who's supposed to be a Frenchman. So they actually put this wig on him, and it's very strong. I actually saw a picture of it just today,
I would love to see it.
and it's just always so odd. I mean, Patrick Stewart is just renowned for his bald head. He did bald early in life, but I mean,
does bald well.
he is. It's his distinctive limb with that wig really throws things off. But we digress quite a bit. We're going to get off in some little transwarp conduits every now and then when we're talking about things.
So
let's get back to the episode.
The battle.
Riker has now a duty to inform Starfleet about Picard's log entry from 9 years ago that they found. I guess it was Kazago, or it was Damon Bach that transmitted this. What apparently turned out to be a forged entry that found. He informs Riker that log was a forgery from the Ferengi. Now our wonder boy Wesley tells his mother and Troi that he also noticed that the captain's brainwave patterns match exactly the low intensity transmissions being detected coming from the Ferengi ship. So now we got another piece of the puzzle that's falling in.
As Wesley sits back on one of the consoles and sick bay where he says, "You're welcome. I handled it again." Referring to his mother and Deanna Troi. But
what a prima donna, huh?
I still love Wesley, but yeah, it is a little bit over the top. He is definitely a Mozart. Now, Picard beams over to the Stargazer and is having strong memories reliving the final battle of Maxia on the empty, derelict Stargazer bridge. Now, the memories are so real to Picard, we see some of the crew members like Vigo as one of the characters and others while the battle occurs and his fire going flames. Picard's like he is in this moment, but to him it's so real and so sound, and as you refer to, he has the smell, so something is happening in his head. But Picard, so out of his normal head, has an open view screen with Commander Riker.
Absolutely. I gotta say, the effects that they used on that show, the ghost images and the superimposing of the fire of that bridge while he's on the practical set, I really loved that.
I did. Nice touch.
Yeah, right. Is that it's going to use the Picard maneuver again. So he orders Data, come up with a suitable defense and do it now. Then the other Ferengi ship, First Officer Kazago, hails and tells Riker that Bach has been removed for command for his part in this unprofitable venture. So again, coming back to profit. And now Riker has to be convinced Picard to destroy this think-may found on the ship that has controlled his mind. So Picard, get that phaser and find that silver sphere and shoot it with your phaser, because you were in very close proximity to it there on the Stargazer bridge.
That's right. With that Type 1 phaser, they only used like in the early parts, and I think the last time Wesley used it in the first duty. Now Picard returns to normal. He then beams over to the Enterprise, leaving the dead to rest in peace and letting the past remain in the past to end the called the Battle of Memories Ferengis. Now we will rank the episodes now, this time after we review them here this week on a Captain's Log streaming at warp speed. Try something a little
change
bit
it up a little bit.
So Chip, what's your ranking and reasoning for the episode titled The Battle?
So this is a really good episode. It's a little bit higher than average where you would expect an episode to be in the first season. Again, we're still in the first season of the show. We're still getting our legs under us. So the backstory that were Picard's previous before he gets to the prize. The special effects on the bridge, like I just said a little bit ago on the Stargazer. I'm going to rank this a 4 out of 7. A good solid episode, a full lieutenant ranking.
Nice. That's a good ranking. I would agree with that. And you know, it's only in production order on the VHS. The 10th episode ever made, to your point. It's very early on, so it's a pretty good ranking. For
it's very good. I love the plot points and that we do get.
Yeah, really solid up in season 1. My ranking is just slightly higher, 5 out of the 7. I give it a lieutenant commander because this episode is actually an elaborate scheme of Ferengi revenge where Damon Bach is using the pretext of this well-intended gift as a way to torment Picard with his mind control device hidden on the Stargazer. Director Rob Bowman does an excellent job, who's always getting raves of good reports from our friend Dennis Matalone as the director. I like Doug Warheat's role as the Ferengi first officer truly changes on Riker and the humans between both his scenes and isn't predictable at all like we've seen from some Ferengi in the first time. It's really a good redemption and a follow-up the second time around seeing the Ferengi. And also Frank Corsentino's performance as the Ferengi Bach was stellar and revengeful in getting back at Picard for killing his son. To me, it was kind of cool how later we get to see a follow-up of Bach from season 1 all the way to season 7, but this time the actor Lee Berg in the follow-up and Next Generation episode. And lastly, Picard and Riker both have solid command decisions and scenes opposite each other, mano-a-mano, on the view screen that come together thoroughly, written dramatically in this episode of the battle. So let's get to Hide and Q.
Yeah, now we are getting into Hide and Q. The very first line as a part of Captain's log explains why Marita Sirtis isn't going to be getting a paycheck this week. She's Deanna's being dropped off at Starbase 6 for a shuttlecraft ride to Beta Z. Now let's check out this trailer. Engage.
Next time on Star Trek The Next Generation.
Can any of you stay alive?
The crew's challenged once again by the dreaded Q.
We have offered you a gift beyond all other gifts.
Tempting Commander Riker with extraordinary power.
Are you strong enough to refuse to use that power?
The game comes a differentiation. On Star Trek The Next Generation.
You know, I guess that was a writer who put Troi in that position. So that she can't overanalyze Q this go around, because she did encounter at Farpoint.
Yeah, that's definitely a good point. I didn't think about it in that frame of mind.
I wouldn't say Marina was at much fault, though.
No.
All a matter of perspective. Now, the omnipotent entity Q rears his head on the eyes once again in this episode, Hide and Q. So in this episode, Q continues his showcasing as himself, fully clothed and portraying himself as specific aliens like the three-headed Aldebaran serpent. And also Earth elites such as a Starfleet admiral, a French field marshal, and later a monk.
Yeah. Now, Dr. Beverly Crusher is hurriedly preparing her medical staff to treat the massive number of injured colonists. Crusher has to use a comm panel in the corridor instead of tapping communicator. That's kind of odd. We have the tappy communicator going on. Interesting that it's kind of a retcon back to the original series where you had that button that you had to push there on that panel.
That's right. Maybe Bob Justman had something to do with that because he was producing season 1 TNG and of course original series. Who knows? But I saw Riker and Picard and a few others do this in season 1.
Yeah, she wasn't the only one.
The producers, still a lot of them producing in season 1 from original series. Maybe perhaps headcanon like to use an ship communications panel instead of her comm badge. This is not really fleshed out until later when the crew simply tap their comm badge or confidently look up and say, Crusher here or Riker here after a
well, they were looking up into the sky when they say that. Now, it's also interesting to know that if Q's original appearance, and I love, again, great visual effects there with that snake there, his three-headed snake, might have been in form maybe Roddenberry in the triune nature God, God the Father, God the Son, and God the Holy Spirit.
I could see that. That's a good interpretation, absolutely, because even though he was a humanist, he still brought in sprinkles of the Bible a lot.
Different religions as well, too, not just nothing.
Christianity, yeah. I'd say that it's likely, though, that the three-headed snake was a possibility. It was a Trinity biblical homage, but I had to ask my daughter about this, as she's a big reptile aficionado.
Yeah.
So as a three-headed occurs on a 6th century bit of history in Greek mythology, Cerberus has 3 heads, a mane of snakes, and a snake tail. Now, with his 3 heads, it is a prominent past figurehead, and is more likely that is what Q manifested himself into.
Okay.
If you want to look at it like that from a different religious standpoint. But then he turns himself into a human Starfleet admiral like he did many times later.
Yeah, it's such a big surprise. And I love Q for exaggerated admiral uniform. I don't know. I mean, was this intended to be over exaggerated? Because this is gold, yes. This is going to be the first admiral uniform that we're going to see. Or you know, there are many different designs as we go through the series, especially originally early on.
Yeah.
Did they not decide on a particular design, or is it possible that, you know, each admiral maybe got to set his own design, his own?
I don't know where Theseus, the wardrobe, was just trying to experiment on screen.
Yeah, definitely.
There's different fleet admirals like Quinn later, who's wearing a different admiral uniform.
We get 3 admirals right off the bat, and we get 3 different designs on those uniforms. Yeah. So.
You have to be observant, you know. You have to be observant if you're a Trekkie. But
yeah, these are definitely the little things that the Trekkies were going to pick up on for sure.
Yes. Oh, absolutely. I think that's evident in season 1 next for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
But any season 1 admiral uniforms we get to see, I don't even know if we could count them. There's probably almost double digits if you want to count on both hands.
Probably at least as many chief engineers as there are admiral uniforms, right?
Yes. Now back to the story and our review here on a Captain's Log streaming at warp speed. We're reviewing Hiding Q, the season 1 Next Generation episode on DVD Disc number 3. So en route to a mining colony at warp 9.1, as Mr. LaForge says, is once again Q's force grid that we saw in Encounter at Farpoint.
Yeah, we did see this. Encounter at Farpoint is the same ship tapping the wall of space to stop the Enterprise and pay attention to the omnipotent Q.
Q, as he always snaps his fingers in warp field special effect plays. But Q appears as we originally said, as an Aldebaran serpent on the bridge of the Enterprise, and informs the bridge crew Q Continuum, after the recent humanity, are mostly impressed by them and wishes to discuss it. Picard urgently asks to wait until they've completed their mission, but Q demands he abandon that mission, even though it's a mission of mercy. You know, it's a very big medical mission at this point.
Yeah.
He then changes into a Starfleet admiral again, as we said, Mr. Q.
Yeah, Q goes from admiral to Q as a marshal of France. As he should go to less. The question as to why he settles back to captain for the remainder of his appearance.
Right.
So we get down to the planet. Q brings everyone down to the planet. We got a big green sky. He brings Riker, he brings Data, LaForge, Natasha Yar, and Worf off the bridge to a Class M planetoid as he ominously appears after wanting to be found to play a game.
Game? Game?
How joyous!
Q promises a great future for humankind if they win, but something disastrous if they lose. Furthermore, the game will be completely unfair, brushing off fairness as a human concept. Yar protests, and Q transports her away to a penalty box. But unfortunately, here's where it gets really deadly. If Yar dies, there's nowhere else for her to go except nothingness, like an atheist would believe. Pretty crazy, right? But unbeknownst to she is really back on the eyes. He says that if anyone else violates the rules of the game, they will be put in the penalty box, displacing Yar into that nothingness. Pretty scary.
I gotta love a reference to a penalty box.
Absolutely.
That is from our beloved favorite sport of ice hockey.
That's right.
Let's go Blues.
That's right. I was wearing a Blues hoodie before we even started taping today.
That's right.
I always think of a hockey or NHL when it comes to this great scene in Q, but it's a great reference, like you said, Joe. But truly, this is one of the best emotional Picard and Yar one-on-one scenes, talking about how Picard is a good mentor to the younger Tasha Yar. Yar is so fed up that she is also on the verge of tears, but Picard tries to comfort her, but she is ashamed of herself for even thinking out loud like this about showing weakness, being the security chief, especially in front of Captain Picard. Picard realizes that emotion is not a sign of weakness.
And she, almost senses she's got a little bit of attraction for Picard as well, too.
Yes.
That's where, Q comes in and, penalty's over.
That's right.
Because we didn't need to see that progress any further.
As he sits in the captain's chair, Q, at this point.
Now, back on the planetoid, Riker and Q discuss the powers that Q has granted to Riker. Interestingly, the rank insignia that Q wears on his uniform is the Starfleet Commander, implying he and Riker are now equals.
Oh, wow.
Riker asks what Q wants from him. Q replies that the Continuum has granted them a gift beyond all other gifts. He explains that before Farpoint Station, they saw the humans as merely only savages, only, again, a savage childlike race.
Yes, a grievously savage child race. That's a mouthful.
Indeed.
Now, unarmed on with a number of army creatures moving towards them, only Riker's powers can save the crew. Riker gets a little bit flamboyant and really animated when he uses the power of the Q. Use your power, as Q says. Use your power. But Worf is stabbed by a bayonet from one of the animal soldiers, and after Wesley Crusher runs to his rescue, the acting ensign is killed as well. I knew I would get a reaction out of you.
Best scenes of the season.
Oh, Wesley. Riker's newfound powers also create a Q-style force field around the soldiers and transports the crew back to the Enterprise, healing Worf and Crusher in the process. But Jean-Luc Picard is stunned at this.
Well, we got Worf back. That's great. Going back to the Green Sky planet where Q had the away team, I really enjoyed the makeup in this episode, the alien things. I mean, why couldn't they come up with another than that phrase? It seems a little hokey.
Like a colonial army.
Right. I love their makeup and I love their costume. But that term, alien things, I just wish that it was like a lazy way of writing this.
I agree.
For the bayonet wielding characters. Now, Q in Mr. Data's makeup was a really cool idea. I loved that. Props to Michael Westmore and his team for putting that together. That makeup is amazing. And anyone that wears that makeup, it just gives them a really cool look.
It does.
So I loved seeing Q in that this time.
But there was a purpose for it.
There was a purpose. He replaced Data's stand-in right there.
It had to be a long day for John Delancey going to a Paramount.
Yep. This is the first, I think the only time that Q was ever stood in for Data.
That's right. So we've seen him as a captain rank. We've seen him as a rank, and now if you really look at it, he's
Lieutenant Commander,
well,
Mr. Data.
Executive of the three main bridge crew. I like how Beverly Crusher has her arms folded and is not amused by Q and Riker's power that he's been given while sitting on the bridge. She's just like, not amused. The senior staff, including Wesley, meets on the bridge. Riker explains that even though he has been granted unusual powers, he is not a monster, he assures the crew. He's the same William Riker that they know and love. But Picard reminds us already changed example by not addressing Captain, but by his first name, Jean-Luc.
Oops. That was probably a slip of the tongue by Riker, so he probably didn't even realize that he did that.
He couldn't have.
Now, Riker handles Q's great gift at first, but then he starts to become arrogant with it. Remember the old saying, power corrupts.
Yes.
Not anything unlike, Gary Mitchell's transformation in Where No Man Has Gone Before in the original Star Trek series.
Yeah, I like this scene almost when we were children with the hypothetical praise. Like, here's a premise for you. The hypothetical praise that we would always bring up. If you could have 3 wishes, what would you do with those wishes? And of course, the first wish is always have unlimited wishes, of course.
Oh, unlimited wishes.
Yeah, so of course that's the position that Riker's in, like we were when we were children, thinking if you have 3 wishes that you could grant, you could have anything you want. And so he proposes this. Yeah. So Riker asked to give each of the they would most like wishes. Dr. Crusher asked Wesley to leave with her. Riker, however, knowing that his young friend wishes he was older, turns Wesley into an adult, aging him 10 years instantly. He offers to make Data human, but the android vehemently shows some emotions with his face and finger and points at Riker to decline.
Yeah, I mean, this is good casting for the old Wesley. I think, they did really good. Couldn't have kept them, you know. Will Wheaton, we really don't need you. We got this new guy.
I like Will Wheaton.
Will Wheaton's a good character. He's a good guy.
Yeah.
I think it was just really bad writing for his character that I didn't particularly care for him.
I
But
would agree.
I would have liked it if they could have kept this older Wesley. Definitely a lot more story potential in something like this.
Yeah.
One of the more powerful moments that we get coming up is you know, get to see Geordi's real eyes.
That was cool.
As he's granted his wish to see, and he looks at Yarn, telling her she's beautiful and has a genuine love for his new vision, looking around and smiling. Now, there are only 2 other times that we ever get to see LaForge with his real eyes in the entire Star Trek franchise. I'm going to tease a little bit of impossible inquiry right now. I'm going to quiz you right now. Tell me these other instances where we see Geordi's real eyes.
Where we see his real eyes. Now, does this count the feature films Star Trek First Contact and later, where he has these implants that are like a blue contact
So
lens?
it's the entire franchise, but those contacts are not his real eyes. Those are implants still.
Ah, okay. I'm going to say the Mind's Eye. That was the Romulan episode where he's being interrogated in the 4th season. Does that
Okay,
count?
so no, you seen his eye has the, you know, he's
White
still, but
contact.
his, you know, like what eyes, you know, would have been.
Gosh.
I'm sorry, let me clarify that
Well,
for
you know,
you.
I'm going to ask, being a Trekkie, like, get very, very
Yeah, you got to
deep
get
and
slide down.
technical.
You
Technobabble.
His brown eyes, real brown eyes, like
Okay.
you see here in this episode.
Gosh, I don't know. I honestly can't think. Those are the only 2 instances that I thought I possibly had any type of line of thought to relate to him seeing. And you're not talking about all good things.
No?
No, because of contact lenses as well.
Yeah.
Gosh.
All right.
Okay.
Well, I'm going to let you know. Number one, you were almost, I thought you were going to get it, right? When you were going to the movies.
Okay.
Right? Insurrection is one of them, where they go to that, you know, that planet and they all get rejuvenated, the Baku planet. Right? And he's looking at that sunrise or a sunset. So you get to see. No, that's the only time in the movies. There's one other time in the series. One of the later, I can't remember the episode off the top of my head, but it's using this computer that's moving through when he's looking for
That's
his
the name
mother.
of the episode.
Interface, yeah.
Yeah, from
that's
season
right.
7.
He's looking for his mother. We see him as, you know, he's looking, you know, around. That's part of the stinger, the teaser of the episode, where you're seeing him without his visor with his real eyes. You're like, what's going on? Until you realize it's not really him.
That's a good impossible inquiry.
Yeah.
So this is the first time we get to see Geordi's eyes in Hiding Q.
Yeah.
We see it in Season Inheritance, and then we get, as he's healed on this rejuvenating planet, the Baku, in the 1998 film Star Trek Insurrection, the 9th feature. That was pretty cool.
Yeah.
Nicely done. Now, I will guess that if there was some type of mirror universe, maybe if that's a potential thing, Geordi LaForge maybe could have had some natural eyes.
That would have been, yeah, because remember, they did ask, I think, was it even in Incarnate or Farpoint where Beverly asks him, would you want to have that surgery to have your eyes back? Into a mirror, that's a very good potential to have done that.
And it's at the beginning.
It's a good thought there.
So Riker is back to normal in the final scene of this episode that we're reviewing, and we're going to wrap it up here, called Hiding Q, which has thunder sounds on the Enterprise bridge, and a bridge in Q abruptly called back to the Continuum, screaming for a second chance. No! So, Chip, what is your ranking and final analysis as an LCAR style of this episode? Hiding Q.
This is a great episode, just like that last episode. We're well above par again. First season. We get that plain backdrop right here. You know, we're not like we had that episode of Haven where you know you actually get to see an actual city or whatever. We're back to that plain backdrop again, so that drops a little bit of the I guess the production value in my standpoint. But I'm going to give it a 4 out of 7, just like that last episode, ranking Lieutenant. But I really love the story. Again, another appearance by John Delancey as Q. Awesome. Fun episode. You get to see Riker in a little extra role. You know, Wesley dies. That's always a positive. He's brought back, unfortunately, but it's a fun episode. Q is one of my all-time favorite characters in the franchise.
Too. And John Delancey just makes it. My Hiding Q ranking is exactly the same as yours.
Oh, is this the first time agreeing completely on an episode?
One time on where no one has gone before, didn't we? No, because you boosted your ranking.
I did.
In the episode.
Yeah, you
but
gave
we
it 6,
originally
I gave
were,
it a
in
7.
pre-production, we're agreeing on the same ranking.
Yeah.
But yeah, I agree with you. 4 out of 7 is a good ranking for this episode. I concur. My thoughts on Q, challenging Riker and the bridge crew minus Picard. This time he's interested in Riker. To a deadly game. It was really good. Typically, the opposite personalities of Q and Picard clash, so not having Picard interact as much was cool that we could have seen, but Riker, except for that throwing of the Shakespeare book, that was cool.
Oh yeah.
But Riker having his chance to be a Q from really almost the very beginning of the episode, and from Beverly Crusher and the medical side of this episode, beginning and final scenes, it does offer a fascinating moral dilemma when the girl dies and Riker decides not to bring her back, right?
Yeah.
And that's the weight of the potential benefits of accepting Q's power to save some people, and he decides not to. Now, that planet set very nicely, put well together. I thought it was a good, quick thing. You can see the Federation production design as they try to pry the door open. I thought that was cool. But let's get to our next episode in our HVR review titled Haven. Check out the trailer.
Next time on Star Trek The Next Generation, Counselor Troi faces a prearranged marriage.
Isn't this simply beautiful?
She's torn between love and leaving the Enterprise.
Us has it just as we do.
But when the groom risks his life to help a plague-infested ship,
My son surrounded by those horrible lepers.
he threatens to destroy their future on Star Trek The Next Generation.
Orbiting planet Haven, Captain Picard, in an upbeat manner, believes legends are the spice of the universe, where planet Haven has been said to mend souls and broken hearts. Meet Captain Riker. Commander, when did he get promoted?
Commander Riker.
Commander Riker sits in his quarters before being interrupted by Yar to come to the transporter room. Riker, only for a moment, is seen relaxing to a miniature holograph of attractive women playing harps on his silver desktop holographic interface plate. Season 1 holographic emitting plate, much like the one Ambassador Kreutz has on our TV series. A captain's log, a holographic Borg cube in the quarters, just is right across the right over there. Yeah,
right over here. And next season, on our TV series, I will change that Borg cube to another hollow image for an update. I think it's time to do that.
All right, I like that.
Season 4, look for it. A Captain's Log on TV, or check your local listing. So, getting back to Haven, Riker asked Yar what Riker asked Yar what he's needed for in this sense, but she answers that an object being beamed up to the Enterprise does not. It is. So Yar asks Riker to join her in the transporter room.
It's pretty cryptic, isn't it?
It is, yeah, especially when that's like your commanding first officer. Now, the transporter chief informs them that the planet Haven has approved the beam up of an object that materializes on the transporter pad, an odd object. Riker finds it odd looking. Counselor Troi then enters, asking what is going on. The box's face, played by Armin Shimmer, in his first role.
Very first, before he became...
Yeah. I hold a message for Deanna Troi. Loxana Troi and the Honorable Miller family will soon arrive. The momentous day is close at hand. Rejoice! After a frightening Yar and a compartment underneath the face opens, spilling jewels onto the transporter pad. Ooh. That was my rendition of Armin Shimmerman.
You did that very well.
This episode so many times. So Troi tells Picard that the jewels are bonding gifts, or what humans would call wedding presents.
Whoa,
Riker,
wedding.
When asked by Riker who's getting married, Troi says,
the plot is thickening.
Oh,
wow.
yes.
Now that's an amazing just opening. That look of his face like, whoa. What?
Really? You're getting married?
Now, weddings do occur in Star Trek and real life frequently. Yes. To me, this seems like a rehash of Spock to Prey in the original series. Yeah. You would think that Riker would probably have had some sort of understanding about Betazoid betrothal customs from their previous relationship. But Riker, seems completely taken by surprise.
He is, yes. And that goes into the opening credits then at that point. Now, this is a good assessment and opinion you have on this is, it was kind of out of nowhere for Troi to get married and Spock the same thing. back in a original series when he was married to as she appeared on the main view screen of the Enterprise Constitution class for a wedding plan. However, Troi's line sums it up when she says she thought the arranged marriage would never happen. As the years passed, she assumed she would be on the Enterprise's mission of exploration far away as the distance it would take her from her homeworld Beta Z, as she talking to Picard in his ready room. She tells Picard that a man named Stephen Miller was her father Ian's his friend, and this is supposed to marry a arranged set of ceremonies.
Yeah, Troi can sense and even feel that not only Riker, wants to be a commanding officer more than anything. It's not at all like he wants in his life. He implies that he wants Troi, like a bit of last-minute extreme jealousy, as he's about to lose a chance to have a romantic relationship now that he's back with Troi. Now, Troi is told that in-laws and future the Miller family need to beam aboard the Enterprise with her presence needed. A few minutes after that, meet the parents and meet thus future husband. Rather quick speed dating and debating moment. Troi sees someone else beam aboard.
Interesting, yes.
Who's
this other person? Deanna
Who
Troi
could it be?
and Mr. Hom.
Mr.
Troi, second assistant.
I need to interject here because I have some news for you, and you heard it here first, folks. I have confirmed that in our 4th season of A Captain's Log, we have secured the interview for Mr. Carol Stroyek, who played the character of Mr. Hom, Lwaxana Troi's valet.
That's right. It's in my email inbox, executive producer at A Captain's Show. I have to make that phone call. Carol, and we'll get that interview complete, set up for February 2023.
I am
pre-recording.
Excited for that interview because we're talking about him right now.
That's right.
So Mr. Hom and Lwaxana do arrive and materialize on the transporter pad for the very first time in Star Trek The Next Generation. This sets up a huge multi-series spanning recurring role for Deanna's mother, Lwaxana, who's seen at least 9 times in Trek The Next Generation and in Deep Space Nine.
9 times.
Nine.
Just like Ferris Bueller's Day Off, the principal. 9 times. Now, wait a minute. There's more information about this, too. It's not just Lwaxana Troi.
It's not. Look who else just beamed aboard. It's Nurse Chapel. Wait. No.
Same actress.
It's the computer taking physical form. Wait, no?
All the Majel Barrett Roddenberry plays.
By my favorite, played by Majel Barrett Roddenberry, is, of course, Lwaxana Troi. She married the creator of Star Trek, the original series, and Star Trek in general. He created Next Generation as well, too. Gene Roddenberry married Majel Barrett, thus giving her the last name of Roddenberry. She's played so many roles on screen and voiceovers, the original series computer voice as well. Right. Next Generation, Space Nine Runabout, Defeater voice, and voice of the computer on Voyager. She has also had a small voice role in Enterprise and, did you know this? The 11th Star Trek feature film, Star Trek. That's 2009 by J.J. Abrams.
That's right.
Yeah.
That had to have been her last computer voice role, I believe.
Yeah, and this is also in addition to her previous roles as Nurse Chapel in the original series. I could go on and on, but Lwaxana is a very highly mother, a wife of her daughter Deanna, and the Betazoid Federation ambassador. I don't believe her being the ambassador was that fleshed out in this episode, or was that the next episode she came on?
I believe that's later.
But I mean, we get that, she's the daughter of the 5th house of Betazoid, the holder of the sacred chalice of Reeks, and the heir to the holy rings of Beta Z. We do get that. Yeah, who are you? That's great.
Lwaxana, to remind people of this, but lengthy Betazoid ambassador status. In fact, when she felt that she had been slighted or whatever, she chose to establish her authority. This is what she would always say. Keep in mind, she's a full Betazoid and can fully read thoughts, not just emotions like her daughter Deanna Troi, who's
everything.
just a half Betazoid.
Yeah, she reads everything.
Yes.
No, it's funny. I don't know. Some of these things that she's throwing out there, that's a naughty thought, Mr. Picard. You know, is she really just teasing him, or
I think she's teasing him. There's no way Patrick
he's
Stewart
not
as
thinking
Picard's
that.
going to be like that. No. He's an honorable man, honorable father figure. Yeah.
You know, but then she is getting into her Betazoid midlife, so it could be interfering with her mental powers.
Possibly, yeah.
It's just it's showing right now. It just it's shown, but it's not explained.
Yes.
Back on the bridge, Data shows a vessel approaching Haven on the main viewer. When LaForge and Creedification, Picard asks his androration's officer, "Is that the trouble? I think it is."
It's a very dramatic moment, yes. I remember.
Data replies that it is indeed a Tarellian starship. Picard signals for Dr. Crusher and says that the ship must not be permitted to destroy the crew of the Enterprise or Haven.
Yes, because the planet Haven, they keep contacting Picard saying, you have to do something with the ship, right?
Yeah.
Interesting. Similar to the mystery of Romulan in Star Trek, the original series, under Captain Kirk, and Star Trek Enterprise under Captain Archer, meeting or even going toe-to-toe with such a deadly species like the Romulans was a very big deal. That's kind of what this reminded me of. It was ominous. We didn't know who the Tarellians were. Well, Picard, in this case, as you mentioned, with Data pointing out a Tarellian ship that is seen, is a big deal early on in Star Trek The Next Generation. This is only the 5th episode filmed in production order, so it's really early on. Now, Tarellians had a world that was warp-capable humans, very similar to Earth. However, a civil war between the planet's two main land masses led to the destruction of the Tarellian civilization after biological weapons were deployed. That's a no-no.
Yeah,
not just in the Star Trek world, but also in the 21st century, there's talk of that. A few Tarellians managed to escape the planet in ships, like this one, approaching Planet Haven.
Yes, the Tarellian species was established in this episode, specifying that they had already had a deadly disease that no one had before. The species to have been extinct 8 years ago.
Wow.
Now, I recently watched the second season episode of Enterprise where they brought up that Dr. Phlox, from Archer's Enterprise, once cured a case of Tarellian fever. I found that a little bit because I was doing the research for this episode when I watched this episode of Enterprise. So I thought this was a great bit of continuity for Star Trek Enterprise, tying into the Next Generation even.
That's a good point, because I love bridging the boundaries and solidifying
and
things.
especially so far before in the past.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is interesting. Soon, the opposite of emotions ensues as the wedding pre-planning dinner and in-laws begin to bicker. Of course, sounds very familiar here on Earth. As I'll remind you, even though Lwaxana was familiar with the Millers, it was her husband, Ian Andrew Troi, who was a very sweet, loving father to Deanna and Kester Troi and Lwaxana. He was friends arranging the marriage with the Millers. That's why this arranged marriage happened.
It appears that Lwaxana really didn't have much of a role in that arrangement in the first place.
That's right. She doesn't really seem too fond of the Millers. So in Betazoid tradition, the arranged marriage was still on, but clearly you can see Deanna's mother, Lwaxana, and Wyatt's mother, Victoria, clearly didn't get along.
Oh no, definitely they did not. Picard states that there's no bickering permitted, or announce that disputes are resolved.
Wish it was that easy, but only Picard can make it easy like that.
Couldn't it? Yeah. Now, Picard's speeches and authority have always been listened to. So, with these dinners, I love that Betazoid gong of Thanksgiving.
Oh, Mr. Holm is in it, right?
Great bit of humor. I'm guessing Lwaxana is on a constant telepathic link with Mr. Holm, as he knows exactly when he's supposed to be hitting the, watching her biting. Bing! It's funny. I mean, you can tell it's great. Not everyone's nervous every time he hits it. Data is he's so hilarious in this scene. Deanna gets up and she knocks the gun. Stop your petty bickering! And once she finally leaves, Data's like, "Would you please continue the bickering? I'm finding it quite interesting."
Such a on Data line. It really was. So out of context, but makes perfect sense. I really like the red hues of this intimate one-on-one scene with the two trying to get to know each other and catch up. We're talking about Troi and Wyatt in the holodeck. It's a reddish hue, but again, it's an early wow moment that is not on a planet. It's in the holodeck. Producers wanted to show the viewers the capability of the holodeck, right? So you can clearly see the great acting familiarity of forced in this arranged marriage between Troi and Wyatt, and Riker's even in there too. It's like a love triangle.
yeah. Now this is probably what would have happened in a lot of arranged marriages. That bit of forced liking. I mean, you kind of gotta. You don't know the person. You gotta kind of wade through that a bit. But we're back in an early production episode, so we again only see a simple landscape of the holodeck. However, Wyatt seemed very, very impressed with. He was very excited to just. I mean, I can imagine if I was to step into a holodeck, even if it was just a scene, how amazing that is. That's what Wyatt's probably feeling as well. The only thing I can think about when looking at Wyatt in this scene are the Vancouver Canucks.
What?
He's got
the
this
NHL team?
Yeah, so the NHL team, they got that V-neck, that thing. And so this is exactly what Wyatt is wearing.
Awesome.
He's got this thing that comes up, and it's really
the 70s Vancouver uniform.
Yeah, exactly. The big orange V. One of the most hideous uniforms in NHL history. Yes. But that's the only thing I can think of is just that V coming up.
Experimentation by William Werthies, the costume designer, I'm sure, again. I really like the painting and dreams Wyatt was having about this other girl, though, Ariana. Seems like ethic or dream crew for him. Really interesting.
Yeah. Okay, so there's a short visual, the painting that Wyatt made of this dream girl, Adriana. I forget the explanation at all why either Wyatt or Ariana had any sort of connection. I don't even think they explained that. It was just there, so it was really kind of hard to just figure that out. These two had never met earlier and are alien species, but Wyatt embraced destiny as Dr. Crusher prepared medical supplies for the Tarellians. Before he leaves sickbay, though, Wyatt fills a hypo spray with a vial and puts it in his pocket to meet his future wife, who's not Deanna Troi.
Interesting, because we were all set up thinking it would be Deanna
Troi
at the very beginning of the episode when she walks into the transporter. Now, this was your thought in pre-production, or at least the lightning speed research of pre-production when we're doing this show. One and only time you'll ever hear Mr. Holmes speaking, he says, "Thank you for the drinks."
I remember talking with you on the phone. Just was that last night, right?
That's right, yeah.
Yeah. Evidently, Mr. Holm, as a second assistant, is supposed to be either mute or sworn to an oath of silence.
Yeah, interesting.
But let's go ahead. We're, at the end of the episode here, all the major plot points. But let's go ahead. And this episode, it's not, the best episode that is out there. It's not the worst, but definitely it kind of shows it its place. It is, like you said, the 5th episode in production order, although I believe this was the 11th now being aired. I find it well written, well acted, and well executed, but for some intangible reason, I don't really care for it that much. Maybe because it's every other disc is just so much better. This a 2/7. It's an ensign rating for me.
For Haven.
For Haven.
2 out of 7.
Yeah,
okay.
2 out of 7.
Now my Haven ranking is a little bit higher, a 5 out of 7, Lieutenant Commander, and I'll tell you why. We learn a bit more about Betazoid culture and Deanna Troi plus Luoxana Troi since they're on a new culture to the Star Trek universe. This episode is crucial to story arc, continuity, and backstory, but I do agree with you. There are some plot holes, particularly how does Wyatt know in his dreams who Earl is and who this Tarellian is, and how does the Tarellian in turn know who Wyatt is. So that was a big plot story or plot point that had a hole. However, I think there's a lot of continuity and backstory. That's the only reason why I'm ranking it a little bit higher. Okay. We learned so much more about Riker and Troi and Troy's fiancée in a traditional Betazoid arranged marriage, which I thought was kind of cool. It also establishes Picard's complete respect, walks on a Troi, Major Barrett, but at the sheer terror, embarrassing her and her over-exuberant behavior that he tries to quickly but politely silence her quickly. Get her off the ship, please. Before she says
energize. Yeah,
they couldn't say energize too fast, as you alluded to.
Right, exactly. Well, that's a very good rating. 5 out of 7 for you, Brian. Yeah, let's now move on to our final episode of this Season 1 disc, the 3rd disc of Next Generation. The big goodbye. Here, look at the preview trailer.
Next time on Star Trek The Next Generation.
Ready for San Francisco, Mr. Whalen?
Captain Picard visits the holodeck for an adventure to the past.
Something's gone wrong. Everyone inside could vanish.
A mysterious malfunction threatens their journey.
This is not a game. Give me the gun.
Trapping them in a real-life murder mystery.
Shall I kill him? No. Kill the woman.
On Star Trek The Next Generation.
This episode is all about the holodeck. Deanna Troi specifically mentions it's been upgraded. It's time to have a little fun and go play. We have not yet established that the holodeck characters are not supposed to be aware of things outside the program, such as uniforms or crew, talking to the computer. This gets fixed with a little bit of line of dialogue in the next episode, Elementary Data in 2.
After entering the holodeck, impressed by the upgrade, we even hear like a low-frequency radio with audio playing in the background, some type of 1930s or 1940s music. As Picard dons a hat a little bit later, he's wearing his red piping shoulders Starfleet uniform, and he's met by a lady, Mrs. Jessica Bradley, in Dixon Hill's office, who claims someone is trying to kill her. Now, Picard, as Dixon Hill, is hired, even though he's in his Starfleet uniform. I have to say, when I originally was watching this as a teen, I wait for Picard and crew to the holodeck by saying Arch, because this meant that they would re-enter the familiar futuristic world of the ship and wear the Starfleet uniforms. Roddenberry's Utopia future is what I enjoy tuning into, and I didn't like seeing past or Earth-era stories except for the cool actors enjoying portraying characters at times. I've since changed my mind a little bit on that, but I just wanted to give you my thoughts on what I thought.
That's a very
originally.
interesting point that you say that, because I have this feeling with a couple of Star Trek episodes, particularly that there's an episode of Enterprise when they go back in time.
Carpenter Street?
Yeah, that's Carpenter Street. It's just like, it's something completely different than what you're seeing. And I'm like, no, I want to be out in space. I want to be exploring things and whatever. So you have the same reaction to this initially that I had to some of those episodes. Now, again, just like you, I've kind of changed my attitude a little bit about them.
Yeah, a little more. It was Detroit and San Francisco, obviously, in this episode, but it's still Earth, and we've seen that in sitcoms or dramas and stuff like that. I wanted to see Roddenberry's Utopia.
Yeah, and again, we're still early on in the show's premiere.
That's right.
So, Brian, this is an interesting perspective on Trek, down to the nitty-gritty raw materials and formula for liking a franchise. So, this woman named Bradley briefs Dixon Hill on her situation and takes business card, kiss hard and leaving some lipstick on his lip, gives him a little bit of a retainer, right? Picard turns to the window and notices automobiles.
That's pretty much how he reacts.
They're automobiles on a full city block. A fascinating sight to him. He leaves the simulator for the time being, just leaving though. Leech comes knocking at the door and opens it to find, to his surprise, that the captain, Dixon Hill, is
vanished. So that's where that first moment, in my opinion, that the holodeck characters are self-aware, other than when the lady in the lobby mentions Halloween.
Yeah, that's
your
the
Halloween
first
costume.
mention, I think, of any holiday in the entire Trek canon.
Interesting. After entering the holodeck and then these upgrades in a first act of Star Trek The Next Generation script, I feel it's a producer setup for the story to insinuate these upgrades went very wrong and were intended to be blatant mistakes, with the lipstick staying on Picard and Mr. Leach being self-aware. This was your point you made in pre-production.
Yes. Very
cleverly done, as LaForge would say, though, with the upgrades.
Yeah, the writer's room of producers had this in mind, I'm sure, as these would be errors considering the material, holodeck, the lipstick, as you said, from the woman kissing him. This should have been dissolved when he exited.
Yes.
We're going to have this debate continually going forward a couple episodes from now as well, too. But this should, be a nice prelude setup to the Dr. Crusher holodate when she joins him later.
Yeah, that's kind of how I felt, too. That's why the lipstick was on there. She, wipes it off its
plot point. Yeah, to show the realism of him being in there and the fun that he had and the looks that he gets from the senior staff around the conference room table. It was priceless. Face, yeah. They were just too afraid to mention anything to it. It had to be up to Crusher to be that mother figure to him, you know?
Yes. Another great Picard Crusher set of moments in this episode. Now, imagine trying to stick to a vanilla set of technology rules and remove the lipstick moment. Notices this, but her caring for him is insinuated, in my opinion. The holodeck, remember, is practically brand new. So this is the very first episode where viewers are getting to see a full centric storyline surrounding the technological marvel of living inside another holomatrix world. You know, we're already on steps that are way beyond this. My son is on a virtual reality headset all the time, but the holodeck just takes it to a whole other level. You're surrounded, immersed by it. You can eat in there, and it digests your stomach because it's like
replicated.
Food.
Yeah, absolutely.
Coming through, but living inside another holomatrix world, almost, or being the character instead of reading it or watching the character inside a holodeck is fascinating.
Yeah, that kind of immersion into a story is so fascinating that it would just be fun to envision that. There's that episode in the Future's End of Voyager. Helix and Cass are reading newsgrams and a soap opera of some sort, and I think it was Harry Kim that makes it. I can't imagine not being a part of the story, you know.
Like a holodeck
character. Everybody's just trained to think that way, but Cass, brings up a very good point about sometimes there's something to be said for being swept away in a narrative and not actually being a part of it.
That's a good point. Yes.
But I would, almost like us, reading books too, as a watching television, you're letting imagination play with you when you're reading the page, whereas you can see it all visualized on a screen. But
that's a good point.
I would love to have a holodeck. It would be so cool.
Another technological first for Star Trek that will come eventually.
It's going to. It's going to. Our technological progression, especially nowadays, is so advanced and just quickly just overtaking itself.
It really is.
Yeah. Now, back to the episode here. The Haradan plot that this episode is, in my opinion, kind of superfluous. I think that the only drawback to this episode, it wasn't even needed, really. It made no sense. It could have been replaced with something else completely, or even eliminated altogether, and you really wouldn't have noticed it. That's how great this holodeck portion of the show is.
I agree, and it even won some type of award, I read.
Really?
It honestly did. It won some type of award.
Oh, wow.
Because of the holodeck for the first time and immersing themselves as the characters. Really neat. Cool concept, especially for 1988. Now, perhaps it was a bit of a C plot to ensure Star Trek fans like me and you have something 24th century going on outside the holodeck, and also so Lili could try to extrapolate a language syntax for Picard, telling the Haradas greeting in their language and being coached by Deanna Troi. I did like the alien voiceover, a greeting, honors, and then their large face at the end of the episode. But for the other B plot, there has to be some reason to show some technology of Geordi and Wesley looking through a tiny microscopic lens in the exterior hallway holomatrix panel with a full engineering team while Geordi talks to the bridge. And by the way, it looked like Wesley was leading that team.
Yeah. Now, I'm fine with this other B plot to show the full spectrum of the immediate, whether the change to the maintenance team led by West making progress with the diagram, having it snow, that was a pretty cool little sight gag. The producers, I think they really pulled that one off really good. I mean, it was just like, 2 seconds?
Yes.
It was a 2-second blip and then they're back. So imagine all that production work that went into creating that 2-second shot and then cleaning it back up.
Insinuates how.
And then you're back into the same program for a second. We're getting our heads a bit, but a B plot outside of the Dixon Hill holodeck program. It's a futuristic world they're living in, but I didn't like the Haradan B plot. It really it didn't add much to the story to me.
I agree. It really wasn't. It's understandable, Chip. It wasn't a visual on screen either for the Haradan. So back to the story order of the big goodbye episode as Chip and I review Disc 3 DVD, our home video review of Star Trek The Next Generation Season 1. On this show, a Captain's Log streaming at warp speed, Data and Geordi LaForge discuss Dixon Hill after meeting in a corridor and compare him to Sherlock Holmes. This intrigues Data, and he decides to look up every piece of literature on the bridge aft station on Dixon Hill in the back of the bridge. Data then decides he could or should accompany Captain Picard and Weyland on their excursion to actually characters in this holiday. But so the trio of these three people, Data, Picard, and Weyland, enter the holodeck.
Now, Data getting the information from Dixon Hill from the LCAR's computer. I love it. I mean, let me also mention here that Brote and Forrester were established as the publishers of the Dixon Hill franchise.
Really?
Yes. They did that holo program. It was referenced by Paris and the Doctor Trek Voyager episode Author.
Okay.
So it's more bridging of the Star Trek series.
I love it. Trekkies love bridging Star Trek series to fill in those gaps in the continuity, for sure. So Picard, Weyland, and Data are decked out in 1940s style clothing. They arrive in the middle of a busy San Francisco, California street with real automobiles using internal combustion engines as opposed to fully futuristic electric cars and flying shuttle that they've read about or used. Almost immediately attracts attention by not being around from around here, right?
Yeah.
Picard claims that Mr. Data is from South America, to which a nearby newspaper seller responds, "Yeah, and he's got a nice tan."
I love that guy. that guy, I can't remember the actor's name, but he goes on to play in an episode of Past Tense of Deep Space Nine. He's the main cop that Cisco as Gabriel Bell is checked as a hoss.
That's right. He was on a magazine episode.
But Data from South America, that's great. Now, again, in a later episode, Time's Arrow, when they go back in time in San Francisco from the, he's a Frenchman.
Okay.
Right? Remember that?
That's right.
I'm a Frenchman, sir. Right? So it's kind of interesting. Why didn't they would have been a nice callback then if they went back to the whole South America gimmick.
Yeah, cool callback to the big goodbye, for sure. It's a nice touch for sure, but Data better knows clean here. But I do like how this conversation shifts a bit to the Yankee Clipper in the encyclopedia style. Mr. Data references the Cleveland Indians, Major League Baseball team, not the Guardians.
Yes, it's very... It is very clear, starting here and for years to come, that Trek producer would be referencing baseball. Even Ben Sisko tossing around a baseball in his Deep Space Nine office. Here in the big goodbye, though, we have our first reference to London Kings ball player Buck Bowley, who is going to break Joe DiMaggio's 57-game hit streak record.
It's going to happen.
And it's going to be seen later in If Wishes Were Horses, the second season of Deep Space Nine.
Wait, Wishes Were Horses, that was a great Dennis Matalone episode.
Yeah.
Where he's in the fire burning.
Yep, he's burning down the corridors of Deep Space Nine.
That's right.
Buck Bokai is also mentioned a couple of times in Deep Space Nine and Voyager.
Yeah, so he's a prominent baseball figure, and I believe it was Michael Piller. He used to wear baseball caps all the time. That was a huge baseball fan. But, I mean, baseball is just an American icon, so why not include it into Star Trek mythos, right?
Exactly.
So great references, Chip. I see why you're a solid producer on our Star Trek talk show. Coming up here in just a few months on television for Season 4. So back on the bridge, the Harada send out a long-range probe and commence scanning our beloved Federation flagship, the USS D, disrupting the ship's system, including causing doors to open and close repeatedly. The Haradans then attempt to communicate with the Enterprise, more specifically the captain, but they are offended to hear only Commander Riker, a subordinate, is available to speak to them.
Dude, that's protocol.
That's protocol for this species, this audio-only species. Riker tells LaForge urgently to go to the captain on the holodeck. They've got to bring Captain Picard back.
Now, there is an easy to the low-hanging fruit writer Trey made to show a reason Picard has to leave the holodeck and discover why he can't at this point when sending Geordi to the holodeck to find him. So if the Haradan are such sticklers for details and protocol, it seems unlikely that they would demand to their accelerated timetable and be greeted hours earlier than scheduled.
Exactly, right? That's unreasonable, especially when coming to diplomacy.
Yeah.
That's a great assessment. of the time that your Rodents are very by design, as I'm sure Tracy Torme intended in his writing, especially if you have to greet them in their own language with no universal translator. I love how Torme portrays Dr. Crusher entering the holodeck with some difficulty, and Dr. Crusher's offered some chewing gum by a guy that's interested in her. And
that's a great scene.
She swallows it. She doesn't know what chewing gum is. She's from the 24th century. Why would you have chewing gum?
Yep.
It shows the Ferengi cast in a out of their elements. 1940s in a lobby of a police station. Now Data confuses her, Dr. Crusher, with his newly learned 1940s accent. Crusher seems excited by the idea of her shipmates being on ice.
They're being grilled.
They're being
exactly. What are they, a fish?
Such a great Data voice.
Yeah.
Crusher innocently wants to know why they're also not being interrogated in the story. It's an amazing live holodeck program she's enjoying. Only a few minutes into it.
Yeah, I mean, I want to be interrogated too. Wouldn't you love to just? I mean, so obviously you don't get the undertones of what's going on, lady. But these are nice nods to proving the 24th century crew would not know what to make of a 20th century situation, or like you said, Beverly takes a quick stick to know what it is. The other time we ever saw a stum was in the Take Me Out to the Holosuite episode in Deep Space Nine, where Miles actually replicates it. At least he knows what it is. Yes. He infuses it with scotch.
Oh yeah, I forgot
and then in the most toys with Fajo, he references gum. He keeps the baseball card of Willie Mays or Mickey Mantle. And he preserve the bubblegum scent. Yeah, we hear references to it, but we've never seen it before. I guess it's gone out of the vernacular, really, for the regular citizens of the 24th century, that they don't know what gum is.
Somehow, but that's interesting.
So she chews it she chews it a couple of seconds and swallows it. It's just funny. She's
and the guy's like, "What is she doing?"
Right? Yeah. My favorite quote from Data in this episode.
Yeah.
You know, he wants to go take a look. He's going to go to his Dixon. Yes, I'd love to take a gander. It's great. I love it.
Oh, it shows Brent Spiner's range in being an actor.
Absolutely, for sure.
Absolutely fantastic. While inside the holodeck, Picard realizes he's got to be getting back to the brig soon for the greeting with a Harada. He manages to worm his way out of the interrogation and leaves the room, the interrogation of the story by the holo characters. Now, back in the station foyer, Dr. Crusher is getting some unwanted attention from a desk sergeant, like about with the chewing gum situation, distracted from by Picard's return. Look at each other for a lingering moment. This is a really powerful moment.
What were they thinking in that scene?
At that moment?
You can only imagine.
Undialogued. It just proves that Gates McFadden and Patrick Stewart are excellent actors.
They got great chemistry.
Absolutely, great chemistry. Not even playing Picard and Crusher. They're playing two completely different people in a 20th century setting in the 1940s. Now, at her request, they all head back to Dixon Hill's office before leaving. However, waiting for them when they arrive, there's a gun on them, ultimately shooting their Federation colleague, Mr. Whalen. Blood's on Mr. Whalen's hand. He says that they're not real. He actually is dying and he's in serious danger. It's a great moment showing another built-in holodeck layer of interest that bullets can harm you in the holodeck when the safety protocols are off.
Yeah, I mean, this is probably the moment where the safety protocols are probably even thought of in the first. We thought about creating these programs or whatever, but now, whoa, let's step back a bit. Maybe we need to develop a little bit of safety going on here.
Sure.
Now, I love that Data trying to move the light, right? Not realize that it's plugged in, you gotta unplug it, right? He gets this
lamp. Trying to turn it off.
There it goes. He taps it and it turns back on. He thinks he just tapped it on himself when Picard's the one getting it and unplugged. Loved it. It was really great.
It was really cool. Another Brent Spiner moment.
Yeah, I mean, it's just it shows the versatility of his character and his acting abilities. I love it. Yeah. So when the mobster Cyrus Redblock begins to wonder about Data, Picard decides to reveal where they all came from, but Leach is not convinced at all.
No, he's not.
Data then exacerbates the situation by revealing that none of the others are actually real, a comment that seems to enrage Mr. Leash. I wished Mr. Data would have finished his answer to Cyrus Redblock of "Where were you hatched?" Right? This really quickly changed to a deadpan South America. You know, that was great. He was about to say, "I was born or I was discovered on Omicron." South America. I mean, I would have loved to have heard that.
Finished. Yeah. Brent Spiner has mashed his deadpan. And just before Leach pulls the trigger, Picard says that he has the item. We don't know what this item is, but it's obviously something fictional in this hollow story.
And it's important, too.
Yes, and Cyrus Redblock is intrigued and calls off Leach. Picard then tries to bargain with Cyrus Redblock to try to save Mr. Whalen, their Federation companion who joined them in the holodeck. We also get to see the Cyrus Redblock character and Leach fail in an attempt to mob-style Picard. Data, the corridor open, holodeck doors open, and they reveal that there's a real world out there. It's not just in San Francisco in the 1940s. And in an attempt to leave the holodeck, they just materialize. Cyrus Redblock and Leach materialize after they go just outside the doors. Data takes the remaining thug's gun and bends the gun barrel with his fingers, showing his power, before knocking him out with one blow.
In mysterious fashion. I'm still curious what the item really was. We never found out, and I guess this was intentional by the part of Tracy Torme, the writer, that we didn't want to. It left a little bit of mystery for him. It was a nice touch, I do think, when Cyrus and Leach did take those first steps out of the holodeck, and then they slowly dissolved, from the bottom up. Other iterations say that matter immediately dissolves at the threshold. And we're back at that whole holodeck. What can go out? What cannot come in? After the crew finally escapes the holodeck, Captain Picard goes straight to the bridge, utters the greeting perfectly to the Harada, thus ending their danger with them. And that was it. I mean, the episode was, pretty much over there. But I love that we do get a nice standing ovation of Picard, and as we set to end the episode, Picard looks to Data and step on it.
Yeah, that's a good way of saying engage. Or
keeping that character of Dixon Hill there. Right. Another great moment that I love of Data is he starts that film noir narration style, before they get to the end of the episode.
Yeah, I like that last part of the holodeck. So where Lieutenant McNair character has befriended throughout, he realizes the possibility that reality is in doubt as a hollow character. He's self-aware, right?
Yep.
He asks Picard, when you've gone, will this world continue to exist? Will my wife and kids still be waiting for me at home? Picard responds with the only honest answer he can find. It's a touching moment. So what is your rating of this episode, The Big Divide, Chip?
Oh, this is an amazing episode. I love this episode a lot. I'm going to give out of 10, a full Commander's ranking by it's the first time any holiday's ever been mentioned on the show. I said that earlier, Halloween, cool. When mentioning Picard's uniform. Can we think of any other instances of holidays?
Yeah, there is another instance of a holiday was mentioned. Original series, Christmas was mentioned. Remember?
Really?
In Dagger of the Mind, Dr. Helen with the blue.
Oh, that's right. The Christmas. And then you do get a sequence in Star Trek Generations when Picard is in his little, wish it were fantasy world with his whole family. Yeah, that's a Christmas setting.
Absolutely. So you just answered your own question. With Christmas, I answered 140. So Christmas is mentioned prominently in original series and in that film Generations in 1994.
Yeah,
that was a good one. So. There you go. Birthday party was mentioned. As for this episode, The Big, I believe it's only less than yours. It's a 5 out of a 7 ranking, but I do completely agree with you. 6 out of a 7 is a good one. So I'm going to give it a Lieutenant Commander. The holodeck served as a way to get main cast members out of their characters in the Starfleet as spacefaring characters and into different outfits and tell stories outside of space exploration, which is probably why I don't care for this one as much as you. However, I do understand fully the reasons why long exploration exploration in space holodeck, and it's useless and interesting. Patrick Stewart, who's front and center throughout the episode, was done nicely. The world of Dixon Hill is carried by Picard's performance, playing 2 different characters in 2 different time periods, showing his range. As an actor, that word range means a lot, believe me. His range of acting abilities is very clear in this episode, The Big Goodbye.
All right. Oh, good. I love that. Let's move on to our disc favorite, Golden Log Award.
Okay.
So we reviewed all 4 of these episodes, and it was my high end that I ranked it. So Goodbye, since we just finished that, I'm going to give that my Golden Log Award of the year. The Big Goodbye did win a Peabody Award. I don't know if you were aware of that.
Yeah, I think I brought that up a little early. I read that in like a magazine publication or article way back in like 87 or something.
Yeah, it was George Foster wrote this episode, and he's the one that got the Peabody. It was an Excellence in Award television for broadcast evidence.
That's pretty impressive.
Yeah.
Especially for this episode, come on.
Indeed. What would you say your favorite is of these 4 episodes of the disc?
Man, you know what? Out of the 4 episodes we've reviewed in HVR this week on DVD, I have a 3-way tie.
3-way tie.
The Big Goodbye episode is one of them. Hide
Okay.
and Q was the only episode not up for my 3-way tie. It was the lowest ranked.
Oh, really?
Yes. So I'm going to go with The Battle as my Golden Log Award on disc 3, but they're all tied. The Battle.
Yeah.
Goodbye. Haven. Yeah.
I
Picard.
did have a hard choosing my.
This is a good disc.
I just the story of the holodeck and all that. I think that was what won it over for me because I was really actually debating the Q and the hide and Q, but you eliminated that one from your consideration.
Just by 1 point, though, by 1 ranking.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was a full lieutenant, but still. Nothing like seeing Picard with some key backstory and even showing his previous ship and the Ferengi species. To me, that's why I'm going to go ahead and just give this to The Battle.
Right.
Let's get to Impossible Trivia as our final here on a Captain's Log streaming at Warp Speed. Our fans certainly have a treasure trove of Trekkie trivia. Star Trek loves to bridge the gap between series and films. So I ask you from this Star Trek Voyager Season 1 episode, the guest star, virtuoso Varn Armstrong, played a Romulan in this episode. Name the episode, name how many quadrants he was present in this episode, and we're going to show Trekkies all the Vaughn Armstrong roles like we did on our episode. Chip, name which number role was in order for guest roles by the virtuoso Vaughn Armstrong. What do you think? What episode am I talking about?
Okay, so Voyager Season 1, Vaughn Armstrong as a Romulan. It's the first appearance of a Romulan in the show. Again, this is one of those ways that they're trying to keep Voyager connected to the rest of the franchise back in the Alpha Quadrant. Eye of the Needle, I think the name of the
Eye of the Needle.
Great of that episode.
I did too.
But you want the name of the character?
No, the order of appearances for Vaughn Armstrong.
Oh, goodness
You know your
gracious.
Trek,
so, I mean, that was the episode that I wrote with the 10 best guest stars of Star Trek that we just did live. And I know, Vaughn Armstrong was number 2 in our ranking.
His first one was Heart of Glory. Is the Klingon that we to way earlier.
We're going to review it 3 weeks from now, I believe.
So that's one role right there as a Klingon. He played a few
that's
Cardassians.
one. I believe they had like 19 total roles or something like
Vaughn
that.
Armstrong
He's got the
amazing.
most number of roles of all of them. And this is going to be fairly late. I would say probably around about 12 or...
You got it. Impressive.
Are you
I'm serious. 12 is correct. Eye of the Needle, the Star Trek Voyager episode, the 12th guest character for Vaughn Armstrong. You got it.
Wow!
Right
Wow! That's even me. Number 12.
Yes.
Wow!
So you technically got
it's got to
free and
be in the
clear
back
first.
of my mind because I did all that pre-production work for last season's episode.
Yes, so I figured it might be a little bit fresh in your mind writing that TV episode.
All right, I tied up the score because if you don't forget, you got one last week.
The Columbia.
We
from
both
Galileo
missed
7.
it. Yeah, we both missed it in the first week, and
That's right.
so now it's 1-1. So. All right, that's happy. Right. I'm not easy on you this time. Got my question last week. All right.
Okay, sweating already.
Okay. How many Next Generation character appearances are made throughout the entire duration of the Star Trek Voyager season run? This includes recurring or major role characters, for instance, Dwight Schultz, you know as Barclay. Every that has appeared on Next Generation, that has appeared on Voyager, how many total appearances would that be?
Wow. So you've got Deanna Troi that appeared on Voyager 3 times. Riker appeared 1 time. Dwight Schultz as Barclay appeared, I want to say 6 times? So 6, 7, 8. And then Riker would be 9. And am I missing one? So we've got Troi and Barclay. That would be 3 characters. There's got to be somebody else from Next Generation that appeared on.
There are.
Oh, Geordi. Geordi appeared in Timeless, the ice episode where the Voyager stuck in. I love that. It's my favorite Voyager episode, by the way. Timeless. So that would be 11 if you include Mr. Geordi LaForge, played by the great LeVar Burton. Is there another?
There's quite a few more.
Wow.
I'm to my Star Trek LCARS database right here. Okay. Let's see.
Small pad,
I do have the small pad.
Okay.
You know, it's got my, I've got my LCARS right here. I am going to go into my database right here, and this is what we've got. Jonathan Frakes with 1. He appeared in Death Wish.
Okay. It was a Q episode, right?
Certus 3, Pathfinder, Flying, Inside Man. Next, we have LeVar Burton, as you got that in the episode Timeless. That was his only appearance.
That's right.
Now, Dwight Schultz as Lieutenant Barclay. Believe it or not, he appeared more times in Voyager than he did in the Next Generation.
Really?
6 appearances
I said that right,
in
though.
Voyager.
6.
You did get that right.
Okay, so I'm good there so far.
Projections, Pathfinder, Lifeline, Inside Man, Author, Endgame.
Okay.
Delancey.
Oh, Delancey, of course! He got her at Farpoint. Ooh! Not missing Trump. How did I miss Delancey?
That's right, you missed. So there's 3 more right there for John Delancey, Death Wish, Q in the Gray, and Q2.
Oh, does Vorik count too, the Vulcan?
No, Vorik isn't going to count. Even though it's the same actor with Alexander Enberg, it's 2 different characters. First as Torok.
Torok in Next Generation.
In Next Generation. And his twin brother. Yes, you heard me say brother, Vorik.
Vulcan Vorik. He looks just Vorik. Enberg.
That's
so
why
they're
they're
different,
twins.
so they don't count.
Yes.
Okay.
All right. Now get this.
Okay.
The lesser known Boothby.
Oh, Ray Walston.
Ray Walston as Boothby appeared in 2 episodes of Voyager, In the Flesh and the Fight.
Gosh, from the great TV series The Walton.
All right. So we also have, and these are the lesser known, Golivek.
Golivek.
The Cardassian preemptive strike, right? He appeared in the Caretaker, chasing the Vulcan in Caretaker. And one of my favorite crossover appearances, both Cole and Eridor, the Ferengi from The Price.
Oh, that's right.
Appear
in the Next Generation,
sequel,
going through the wormhole.
In the sequel episode, False Prophets. So if you add all of those up, we have a total of 19 appearances.
Wait, does Quark? Because Quark was appearance in Next Generation. Then Deep Space Nine is the main character. And in Voyager Caretaker.
You know what? I passed him by because I always associated him with. So you know what? He's a Deep Space Nine. I'm not going to count him because he's a Deep Space Nine. You know, he did appear in TNG.
A lot. We just mentioned one in Haven, right? He was the box, the jewel.
Oh no, that's a different character.
Different character.
Different character.
But he was still Quark.
But Quark, I think, did appear in that Birthright episode.
Yeah, that's exactly it. It's TNG season 7.
Can I count? Oh, it's at 20, but this can actually get, if you want to increase, we also have the Borg Queen.
Okay.
Right? She, appeared in 3. Alice Krige and Suzanne Thompson. Same character, different actresses.
Yes.
Dark Frontier, Unimatrix Zero, and Endgame. Now, there is also...
There's a caveat to it.
There is a caveat. Joe Carey.
Oh, Mr. Carey from Justice, the episode, the red-haired...
Yes.
Relief officer at
Now again, he actually, made a name.
Right.
But
it's still Josh Clark.
It's still Josh Clark, and I want to headcanon because we talked about this last week. Let's call him Mr. Carey. That's another 7 appearances, so we can have a grand total of 30 appearances by Next Generation.
That's a power hitter in baseball. 30 home runs.
That's how we got. So I got you this week.
You did get me. Nicely done. Great research. Well, thank you for joining. Joining us here on a Captain's Log, streaming at warp speed, I'm host Chip. And of course, let's not forget my co-host on television, Lili Fox-Lim. We'll see you next time. Bye for now.